This is our first look and our first taste of the new generation Hyundai Palisade, the big brother to the Santa Fe that we love so much in this current generation. Now, it's a bigger car than before. It's on a 70mm longer wheelbase and it's 70mm longer overall, which is more in the tail than it is at the front here because the front overhang's a bit shorter. So it has a very distinctive stance and distinctly different to the very boxy but good Santa Fe. And that's the purpose of this car here, to bring another SUV to Hyundai's arsenal and to have a car that's a bit bigger, a bit classier, a little bit more conservative than the rather challenging and polarizing, but particularly good Santa Fe. I'm Nathan Ponchard and this is Chasing Cars.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
This spec here is the flagship. It's called Caligraphy, just like it was in the update of the previous model, and that spec accounted for about 83% of total sales. So this is the right one to arrive, and we get it with a brand new generation hybrid system. It's a 2.5 litre turbo petrol with 2 electric motors, whereas the Santa Fe is a 1.6 turbo with only 1. So this has quite a bit more power and torque than its little brother. It does have a 6-speed torque converter automatic, but it seems like it has a lot of power and torque, certainly with those 2 electric motors. So perhaps the 6 gears won't be such a problem. We'll find out when we drive it shortly. This colour here is robust emerald, this beautiful deep metallic green. It comes in 8 colours, a navy blue, maroon, a brown, black, grey, silver, white, and then it comes in 4 interior colours, of which we shall see when we get in the car. It's riding on 21-inch wheels, it does have Pirelli Scorpion tyres, and the entire suspension has been tuned by Hyundai Australia. This has an Australian-specific steering tune and Australian-specific damping tune. It has had other work done with other engineers from Korea to make it drive good on our roads. It also has self-leveling rear suspension. So this is very much about giving it a luxury ride and a polished and sophisticated driving feel. Looking at it, it is clearly very much a rounded box rather than the pure box that the Santa Fe is. It has this lovely ridge on the edge of the bonnet here that really makes the front end of it look quite proud, a big flat front. These are the DRLs here that also become the indicators. We don't get the light band across the top of the grille that is offered in some other markets. I think so Hyundai can guarantee they're going to get a 5-star ANCAP rating, which is pretty much what they get in all of their SUVs anyway. It does have these sort of active grille shutters at the bottom of the grille here to open up more ventilation if it needs to cool the engine and close them off for aerodynamics, although this is very much a big box and I would be intrigued to know what the CDA is of the aerodynamics of this car. Now we are on a 2970mm wheelbase and about 5070mm overall. The Santa Fe is about 2815, so it is significantly bigger than that car, and as we shall discover when we get inside, quite a bit more roomy. What happens though if you can't afford about the approximately $90,000 that I think that this Caligraphy hybrid all drive is going to cost? That's about $11,000 more than the previous top spec Caligraphy, but in 2026 there's likely to be 2 more specs coming. A more affordable Palisade version, potentially without the hybrid system, so just a normal 2.5 turbo, but also an XRT Pro, a proper factory-made off-road version with off-roady parts, with more than 200mm of ground clearance. This only has 187, bespoke interior, all that sort of thing. That might really give the Palisade something intriguing, especially for Australian buyers who love off-roady specs in their SUVs and all-wheel drives. Unlike the very flat-sided Santa Fe, that's very much about getting maximum packaging efficiency, the new Palisade has a little bit more real estate to play with. So it has a few more bulges on the body. Here we have almost a Coke bottle hip, like the old muscle car hips, where it does bulge out a little bit from the body if you look at it from the side. It does have these drawn-on wheel arches that link it to the upper large Ioniq 9 electric SUV that is this car's big brother. So there's an even bigger one again. And I think that the window shape, which is very reminiscent of, say, a Range Rover or one of the generations of Range Rover, really gives this imposing SUV a degree of elegance. I really love the contrast between this sort of matte brushed silver roof rails, the matte silver D-pillar here, and the matte silver running along the side sill that goes into the rear bumper here. It kind of gives it this sort of nicely subtle embellishment without being too chromey and too American, because let's be honest, Americans are the ones that mainly buy the Palisade. They bought 110,000 last year, whereas we only bought 3,000 and something. But I love the fact that Hyundai Australia has made such an effort to make this car good for our market. At the back here, it still has a bit of a Range Rover vibe. These rear lights here look like the previous generation big Range Rover, but they also have a little bit of a Palisade element too. You can't really miss what sort of car it is with the lettering across the back, but I do really like the rear end treatment of this. It's less fussy than its predecessor. It gives it a muscularity and a stance on the road. And in here, we have so much going on with the electric seats, and there is so much space. The first thing you can see here is these really nice brushed metal skid plates across the front here and the pure brown interior in this particular green car. But what you can't see is that it does have a full-size spare underneath the floor, and it's a 21-inch alloy. So again, that's going to be really good for Australia. Underneath here, this little section here, it does have the jack and a little bit of storage area there, but it doesn't have space for the luggage cover. That's about the only thing that it doesn't really accommodate. The rest of it is really quite amazing. It does have a 3-prong proper power outlet over here. We've got a 12-volt outlet there, and we've got a bank of switches here on the left that electronically drop and raise both rear rows of seats. Now, getting all the seats to fold in one go is just a one-touch operation, but before I do that, just notice that all the carpet here is really nice. We've seen a whole bunch of not so expensive SUVs lately have all this puckering around the carpet. I feel like it's here where you can see people saving money, and clearly Hyundai is not doing that. One press and both rows go back, headrest fold automatically, and there you go. Huge. The first impression in the new Palisade's interior is just how different the aesthetic is to a Santa Fe, and I love that because that's the whole point about this Hyundai design ethos of chess pieces, where they all kind of fit into sort of a slightly weird family, but each one is its own thing. And so while I can go through here and pick elements of other cars, and the only one I'm really thinking about is the Volkswagen Touareg, but I think that this is so much more modern than that now quite old car, and it does do a really good job of blending these two curved 12.3-inch screens into something that really is quite imposing, and that is this dash top here. It's stitched and surfaced all the way across. It's really nice and smooth, doesn't feel like plastic at all. This here is plastic, but it's also matte, so it's soft touch. It has an infill of sort of grained open pore wood here. Whether it's real or not, I don't know, but it does look quite nice. Again, upholstery through here, not too soft touch, but it gives it yet another texture, and that texture repeats itself through the middles of the doors, and it just has this really nice layering, and that says expense in interior. Now, this one is called Brown Pure because it is mostly brown, but it does have a little bit of black on the bottoms of the doors and in patches of the boot. There's also a black pure, which surprises probably all black. There's also a charcoal with a bit of different coloured stitching, and there's a light grey interior where it's dark navy down the bottom. So none of them quite as challenging, I think, as some of the Santa Fe interiors, and there is no olive or green equivalent. So it's sort of positioning the Palisade as a little bit more classy, a little bit less living on the fringe in terms of design and colour, but it has a really lovely feel in here. Even the way it's got calligraphy stitched into the tops of the headrests, it's really quite small. It looks a little bit Porsche-esque. It doesn't have too much garishness in any way, shape or form. Even having this sort of ovalish theme with the ventilation here and on there and the circular theme on the doors, I don't know, somehow it actually looks quite classy. It doesn't look tacky or overdone. The steering column in this Calligraphy is fully electric. This is all the way out though. It probably could come further out in my opinion, but it certainly feels good to hold. It's a familiar design from Hyundai. Again, we've got the gear selector on the column stalk here to free up all of this fully exposed ventilation controls where you don't have to dig into a screen. Please, China, listen to what we're saying here. And all of these switches here for all the stuff with the media, the volume, the tune, all proper switches, which is awesome. Even in the center console here, this has been set up for right-hand drive. Like, right-hand drive doesn't account for very much volume in this car, and yet we've got the wireless charger right here next to us and the cup holders here. Unless I'm completely nuts and realise that that's the way it is in left-hand drive, for me it seems to make sense because the phone is right next to you. And down underneath here, below the 3 points of USB-C charging, we have this sort of tray here that's sort of rubberized so things will not slip. It's completely non-slip. It's got a 12-volt outlet on the driver's side to access, another little non-slip tray here, and this pop-open thing here with this fully lined section in here. Don't know whether it has air conditioning ducts in it or not, but it does have lighting, little light bits in there. All of that seems to work quite well. Another little tray through here, again, rubberized glove box, just plain plastic, but reasonably decent space. The doors have space for 2 drinks, but I can only get coconut water into the bigger one of the 2. The other one's probably more for a 600ml or a can of Coke or something like that. But you also have these here, which will take full big gulp coffees because they're nice and big. As for the equipment in here, oh my God, there is so much of it. The Caligraphy has a 14-speaker Bose stereo. The Caligraphy does have the electric steering column adjustment that I've already mentioned, does have 16-way electric driver's seat with the relaxation thing where we've got an ottoman down here to extend out. The passenger has the same thing, 12-way for them with the ottoman extender here, and the controls here that can be run from the back to move this seat in and out. All of this is Napa leather, all heated and ventilated. The second row is also heated and ventilated, and the third row is heated. So there's a lot of equipment in here, given that it is $90,000 before on-road costs or roundabouts, which is a lot of money for a Hyundai SUV, but I really can't see anything so far that it doesn't have. Also, one little design thing that I've noticed that is taken from the Ioniq 5 is it has these floating door armrests where the bit where you grab is hidden and the ambient lighting is hidden in that, and just having this really neat, simple little stitch across the flat door section here. It kind of says quality. It's not over-designed. And the layering of the colouring from the matte silver over the speaker grills and the door handles and a little bit of detail across the top of the dash here and on the steering wheel to the black, fluffy Alcantara headlining and all of the pure brownness everywhere, I think it looks really, really great. Now, while we're only getting one spec of Caligraphy Hybrid so far, there is one option, and that is to have a 7-seat or an 8-seat, because the third row here is a 3-seater, and this one here is the 7-seat. What sets those two apart is that the 7-seat with these captain's chairs has full electric adjustment, even to slide the seats to get into the third row, as we shall see when we get in there. In here, all the seat heating and cooling controls are up here with the full air conditioning bank, which is only for the second row. The air vents are here in the roof, as they are for the next row behind, to kind of keep all this relatively simple. Other stuff we have, we've got USB-C chargers on the sides of both front seats. We've got this tray here that's got carpet all through the middle, mat pockets here. 2 layers of drink holders, one down the bottom that just takes this coconut water, and another one up the top here that's a little bit Kia Sorento-esque. These seats, again, Napa leather. This is with the backrest all the way up. I've also got this sort of infinitely adjustable little armrest here, and if you want to go back, you can go all the way back to about here, which is reasonably comfortable recline-wise. It doesn't have the ottomans that the front seats have, but it does have a little bit cushier headrests. These are slightly cushier than these ones, which do ratchet forward for the driver and front passenger, which I forgot to mention. Now, let's get in the third row. Now, while the 8-seat tumbles and slides forward in a manual way, like the Santa Fe, with these little solenoid push buttons here and one down the bottom for kids, the 7-seat does it all electrically. You just have to have a little bit of patience because it is quite slow in its movement. But once it does that, it kind of leaves this space here for you to not do a whole lot. I've got this seat set all the way back, so when I get in here, which is not so easy for a 52-year-old, and hit this to come all the way back, this is going to return to its rearmost position. And even in its rearmost position, I'm sitting here, my knees aren't even touching the backrest. Admittedly, it's not folded back, but there was still plenty of upright space for me in the second row where it was set up there. And I've still got room here. I've still got a pretty decent seat here. I've got awesome view over both rows in front. I've got an air vent right in front of me. And I've got my own electric adjustment for the backrest here and for the base, which goes further back even, which I didn't realize. So I can have even more space, and I've got my own heating, and I've got a USB-C port, and I've got a speaker and 2 cup holders, which is repeated over on the other side. Like, this is surprisingly luxurious and awesome, given that we're just in a Hyundai Palisade. I can also sit in the center row here, although it isn't particularly comfortable. And it does have a seatbelt here, so this would be okay for kids. You can look all the way through, you can see that flat floor in front of the tray in the middle there, and just have this amazing center view. This is absolutely first class. Okay, some basic stats. It's 245 kilowatts system power, 460 Newton meters system torque. And yeah, 2.5 litre turbo petrol, 6-speed torque converter automatic. Nothing extremely complex sounding, nothing outrageous. And that's kind of the way that it feels on the road. It's nice and strong. If you get in a standing start here, I'm not in sport mode, I'm in my mode, which is normal steering, a smart drivetrain. And if I just stomp it, gets a little bit of battery and then instantly kicks into the power. And then turning into corners, like, this is a 2200 kilo car, and it really just turns straight away. It's about 100 kilos more than before, apparently, but that makes the body a lot stronger. It's quite a different vehicle to the circa 2018 car that was the previous generation Palisade. So this is a new generation car, doesn't really share a whole lot with the Santa Fe underneath, but what it does share is that agility. Even tracing these really tight corners here that we have, it's terrific. It doesn't have adaptive dampers. It has a degree of frequency selective damping in the front and a different supplier for the self-leveling one in the back, but somehow it all works kind of well. It feels really quite supple and blends in together really nicely, and again, turns into corner, like it rolls a bit, but we're in a huge, nearly 5.1 meter long SUV here, and I'm hammering this thing around here, and it's surprisingly drivable. What I will say though is it doesn't necessarily sound like the 2.5. It probably sounds like a little bit of a smaller 4-cylinder, and I suppose it comes back to the fact that it is a 4-cylinder. It's not a V6, and I think a V6 hybrid would probably be more ideal for the stature and the luxury and even the look of this Palisade, but that doesn't take anything really away from the hybrid system that it has here. It's definitely a step up on what the Santa Fe has, and that's what you would hope, given that you're paying substantially more, $15,000-ish more for this Caligraphy version over the Santa Fe Caligraphy. Now, also, I think the 6-speed automatic, I get that they say it doesn't really need 8 speeds, and you know what, it is torquey and quick and does really pick up, but at the same time, I don't know, I suppose it'd be better again with 8 speeds. Whether that fits between the 2 electric motors or not is not my department, but it does seem a slightly last decade-ish with a 6-speed auto. The combined fuel consumption claim for this is 6.8 litres per 100 kilometres. So if you factor in all of the power and torque plus the 2200 kegs of this Palisade's flab, and 6.8 litres per 100 is actually pretty good. I won't tell you what we're reading right now because in the last 20 kilometres we're doing 19.1, but we are fanging it around this driver training circuit. The towing capacity too, it's 2,000 kilos braked, so nothing outrageous. This is more about ferrying people and really quite refined luxury. Now, going through the drivetrain modes here, we have drive and terrain. The drive just has eco, sport, and my drive. Like I said, I set my drive up with the normal steering and with smart in the powertrain. So we've actually got 3 different options. If we hit it again and go to terrain, we've got snow, mud, and sand. So you could take this 21-inch wheeled Palisade Caligraphy all-wheel drive hybrid to the snow in New South Wales and not have to put chains on it, and it would probably do a pretty good job based on the drivetrain performance of some of Hyundai's other sort of electronic all-wheel drive-ish vehicles. We'll go one more go and we'll go into sport mode and just get to the top of this hill and give it one more crack. I will say though that while the backrest is quite grippy and the base not quite as much, actually pretty good, my left knee is jamming into the edge of this console, which does have some trim looking stuff on it, but isn't necessarily padded. That said, I can't imagine too many people doing what we're doing in the Palisade right now because we're testing it for work. One more go. Shifts up at just over 6,000 RPM. Hands are change of direction pretty good. The brakes biting. The hazards have turned on. Yeah, it's so well balanced. You would never know. This Palisade weighs an absolute ton. And when I say absolute ton, I mean 2.2 of those. So further to the Palisade's, honestly, 9-10 tenths dynamics is what it feels like to cruise around. And that's really what this car is about, or this large SUV is about. And it's really quite pleasant. It sort of relies on the low-end battery torque, and because it doesn't have a million gears, it sort of has this naturally sort of calming gait to it. It has a really great view out the front, slightly Kia EV9-esque, but not as broad and not as flat. So, in other words, it's probably quite like an Ioniq 9, but not quite as big and not quite as flat. You can see the little ridges on the sides, again, a little bit Range Rover-esque, but it has this nice low cowl and this really great view out and to the sides. You can see through the little window here, out through the pedestal mirrors, and it has huge mirrors. None of this sort of digital mirror, overly complex stuff here for the Palisade. We have traditional and conservative that works well and doesn't necessarily need changing. And I suppose finally to the ride. This track is not necessarily bumpy, but we are on 21-inch wheels with quite considerable tyres, and it sort of seems to just blot out pretty much everything that's underneath it. Cars that don't ride still don't ride well here, and yet the Palisade, and I'm going to stop calling it Palisade and call it Palisade because I'm not in my own time, and the Palisade just seems to cruise across what is underneath us here really quite competently. It's blotting it out, it's staying in its own lane, it's nice and smooth. The steering is currently in normal mode and it's really quite nicely weighted. It's not too heavy. If we go into sport, which is often a step too far, it is a little bit meatier again, but again, it's not too far. It's been done by HMCA for Australia, and it is not for the marketing team. It is for people who can actually drive, and that's why we love these Australian suspension tunes. I spent quite a lot of time in the older generation Palisade, and even though it was getting old at the end of its life, it was still a really good big SUV to drive. Luxurious and comfortable and great for doing longer distances. But I love the fact that the new generation Palisade, which is what I call it, is no longer a diesel. Being a turbo petrol hybrid very much fits the zeitgeist of 2025. And if it's as good as Hyundai says it is in terms of its economy, then it's better than a diesel in terms of what it's going to be able to deliver. As for the look of it, I think this treads a really elegant line between having elements of the Santa Fe, elements of some of its Genesis cousins, and even elements of the Ioniq 5. This is very much a Hyundai family vehicle, but it also is brilliant at having its own look. And I love the fact that it takes a whole bunch of design cues from Range Rover because it makes it look really handsome without just looking like a copycat. Now, this beautiful sparkly green here is really nice. We love green at Chasing Cars, but that sort of lovely rich brown, the deep maroon, the navy blue, it actually even comes in colors. And while the interior isn't as out there as the Santa Fe's, it's a really lovely and unique place to be. As a 3-row SUV, this is borderline brilliant in terms of its comfort. I kind of wish that it had a V6 powertrain perhaps, and actually had maybe 2 more gears in the transmission, but that doesn't take away from what this is like to drive for the purpose of this vehicle. And there's more to come. A regular 2.5 turbo, which will be the performance option should someone want that in a Palisade. And then there's also the XRT Pro, which is the factory-made, factory-built off-road version, which will bring an element of butchness to this already beast of a machine and really add a whole new element to what the Hyundai Palisade offers in Australia. So first taste, I think it's actually really good. It'll be interesting to see how well it rides on the main road because it rides really well here, and I feel like it completely nails or beyond what it needs to do. That's certainly my first impression of the car. So what do you think about the Palisade? Have you driven this car overseas and really like it? Do you like the styling of it? Do you think it fits in with that family look? Which version would you consider? The hybrid, the regular petrol? Would you wait for the off-road version? All that sort of stuff. And also, what do you think about chasing cars? And if you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video and hit the notification bell. And thank you for watching.